Hey Lee, it's Mark here. How you doing?
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
Doing good, buddy. How's it moving?
Thanks for being with me today.
No, I'm glad this worked out this way. My schedule's been so insane that I'm glad we could slip this in.
Me too. So, how was the tour?
It was great. I had never toured with Lyle doing a small group. I've only done the large band with him. So to be out there with no drums or anything was interesting, approaching these songs, especially the songs in the show that are really drum driven. Like That's Right, You're Not From Texas and stuff. It all kind of sat on my shoulders to really be the locomotive on it. So it was a fun challenge. And we have 3 shows in Dallas in the middle of April, and then a private function in Austin. And then I think June 12th, we start the large band tour, and it's going to be about 10 weeks. So I'll be glad to be out again with that. So I'm sitting downstairs. I mean, I've been downstairs all morning signing books, getting ready to ship. I got about 90 book orders while I was gone. So,
Right.
just a moving target's harder to hit. Just keep moving.
Yeah, I noticed that Lyle liked to dress up on stage. Did he get you into a suit?
Oh no, you can't do the gig without being in a suit. I mean, it's been that way since I've known him. And it's one of those things. This wasn't bad. Summer sucks because you're suddenly out there playing these outdoor venues in August, like in Atlanta or something.
Yeah.
And it's hot and humid, and you're wearing a suit for 3 hours out in the sun. So and we work so much, there's no time for getting dry cleaning done or anything out there, because chances are we're probably working a minimum of 6 days a week.
Oh gosh.
So it's a challenge, but I don't mind. Putting on a suit doesn't bother me at all. Everybody kind of thinks, oh, it must be so, really suck. I go, no, it doesn't at all. I'm fine wearing a suit. In fact, I've done enough gigs where they've required tuxedos that I finally went to an old a shop out here on Melrose called Repeat Performance years ago, and found a 1940s tux that fit perfectly. And I loved the cut of it. And it was like $100 for the entire thing, with boutonniere and buttons and all the accoutrement that come with it. So
Well, that's pretty cool.
you do what you got to do. I don't make the rules when I go out. You do whatever. If I had to wear a cowboy hat, I might make an issue of it.
Yeah. Well, of course, Lyle's an actor also, and
Oh yeah.
I just saw him in Blue Bloods, and
Yeah.
Speaking of hats, that's
Yeah.
what reminded me. He wore his hat. You ever
Yeah,
think
we
about
joked about that on the bus. He said, I'm going to be Blue Bloods is airing, and he was talking about Wahlberg and hats and stuff while we were on the bus. So, but he did Lyle's a unique character. I mean, nobody looks like him,
Mhm.
and he's got that kind of dry humor. So he said, yeah, the kind of roles he gets called for aren't a stretch. It's like, just be yourself.
Yeah.
And then last night he was at Carnegie Hall. They did a tribute to Paul McCartney, and Lyle and Peter Asher redid the World Without Love, Peter and Gordon. And Lyle was the Gordon part, and then Lyle sang Yesterday. So the last few shows we did on the tour, we were doing those just so he could rehearse. So it's great to be busy, especially after 2 years of wallowing.
Yeah. True. Well, speaking of acting, did you ever think about doing that? I know you've done soundtracks and stuff, but
I mean, if somebody offered to do so, I'm not a hustler, and I'm self-managed and stuff, so I don't have anybody out looking for stuff for me, that might come back and say, hey, somebody said they'd be interested in having you be a part of something. I don't have any of that going on, so it's pretty much whatever I can generate myself, and I really don't know anybody in that area that I would even talk to. But if somebody offered something, I'd certainly be willing to go take a look at it and see. But, I'd probably either be, an anorexic Santa Claus or a biker or a rabbi. I don't know, where I would, what kind of calls I would get.
What kind of parents did you have, Lee? And how I know you left college for a music career, so how did they feel about all of that?
It was funny. I started as like kind of this theoretic, I mean, I hate saying that bullshit, but I mean, sort of as a child prodigy on piano. And so, they were always supportive of my music career. But then I also really was good at art. So I remember when I went into college, I left the music department and went to the art and science majors. And they kind of went, so you're not doing music. And then suddenly when music happened with James Taylor, they went, so you're not going to do your art. It was like I was always one step out of kilter with them. But they were great. They were really supportive of everything. I cannot at all, a lot of people reflect on their upbringings and stuff and talk about, trials and tribulations. And they were great. I never had any issues. They were supportive of kind of anything I wanted to do. And the same, I have a sister 2 years younger than me. And they were the same with her, kind of whatever she was choosing to pursue, they were, supportive of it. So we were fortunate on that level, because I knew a lot of guys who were always having battles with their parents, and their upbringing was really difficult. So I feel lucky. I mean, my folks are gone now, but they were always right there if needed. So
That's nice.
I feel fortunate.
Yeah, very fortunate. In the 60s, of course, before you were famous, so to speak, you were in, we know you're famous now. Okay.
Whatever you say,
okay. You were in several bands. So did music pay the bills then, or did you have some other jobs?
Well, I had a bunch of different jobs. I worked at a place as an assistant arc welder making swimming pool filters. I worked at a printing company. This was one of the funnier jobs. There was a printing company right near my college, and they offered me a job there for $2 an hour, paid under the counter, because they were printing porno magazines. So I was running the offset printing press and cutting paper, and then they had me doing layouts for their ads and stuff like that. I did that for probably a year, because it was great. They said whenever you can come in kind of situation. So and it was like a 10-minute walk from school, and that was about the same distance to the apartment that I was living in with 4 other people. So but different kinds of jobs. But music, if I look back at it, back when I was in college, I mean, when I finally rented a place myself, I rented a place right on the beach in Venice, California, for $90 a month.
Wow.
So, back and gas was still about $0.25 a gallon. So, I would play clubs on the weekends and stuff, and we might make like, $25 or something like that. And a couple of those gigs a month kind of paid the bills. So it wasn't like you were really, not like when I see what people go through nowadays trying to support themselves. So it certainly didn't afford extravagance, let's say that. But I was just happy to be playing. I was sometimes in 3 bands at the same time. And we were always playing fraternity parties for UCLA or USC. I knew all the fraternity houses really well from playing gigs. And it also made me at that point know I never wanted to be in a fraternity. I thought, what a bunch of dicks. It's like, but we were always hustling, local gigs and stuff like that. So I tried to stay busy through it. But it's one of those things, you never really are sure that this will ever be a profession, because it's one of those things that is never at that point in your life taken seriously by those around you. They're waiting for you to discover what you really are going to do once you get over this this kind of fantasy world you're living in. So it was really amazing to me when I started with James Taylor, and the realization came in that this might actually be a viable career.
Mm-hmm. And you were in the band Wolfgang at that time, I think.
That's the band I was in when I met James.
Yeah.
And
so he wanted you.
yeah, I would, I mean, if I have to look back at a pivotal moment in my life, certainly meeting James at the time I was in Wolfgang, and him coming to our rehearsal as a friend of John Fishbeck's, and then him. I mean, had it not been James, it had been just another guy coming over there. None of this would have ever happened probably for me. But for the fact that he went from like nothing to becoming the face of an entire new movement in music, and having been able to like just grab the coattails of this new movement with him, and also so much of it really comes back to Peter Asher, who was managing and producing him. It was an absolute pivotal quantum change in my life. And one of the things that all of us reflect on is the fact that Peter was really the first person to put names on an album of music credits. So when you look back at the Wrecking Crew and all the people of that previous era, when people were listening to records by the Mamas and the Papas and the Association and Frank Sinatra, they had no idea that they were listening to the same musicians on all of these because they were never given credit. There were liner notes on records and things like that, but certainly very little credit. There would be like, for Sinatra, there would be Nelson Riddle, arrangements, things like that, but the musicians themselves weren't credited. And Peter made a point of putting all our names on James's records. And at that point, when people, with the advent of James's success, all of a sudden the labels were signing singer-songwriters and starting this whole new thing. And when it came time to putting the sessions together, they would look at James's record as kind of a benchmark for this, and they'd see Danny Korchmar and Craig Durgee and Russ Kunkel and myself on there, and they'd go, well, look, if this is good enough for James, let's call these guys. So we literally, I know personally myself, I went from having zero, the only studio experience I had was when we cut some demos with Wolfgang. And that was just a day in the studio. And I went from that to becoming a first call player in town with having no experience and really being on the job learning what the hell my job was while I was at my job. So it was an intense period of for all of us. But boy, I look back now and I'm forever grateful of what we got to experience and kind of really being there for the golden age of studio work, because what we did then basically doesn't exist anymore. So it's a completely different world now.
Yeah. And Carole King was in his band also, correct? Until she did Tapestry.
Yeah, she was the original piano player with James. She was brought in by Danny Korchmar when they were looking for a keyboard player, and Danny knew Carole previously to all that and introduced her. So she came in, and after somewhere during, I think, the first year of touring, James finally kind of pushed her and said, let's do some of your songs in the show too. You go and let me showcase you. And she freaked out. She had never really done, had this profound career as a songwriter, but she had never been out performing herself. So all of a sudden he'd say, okay, Carole, do a couple of songs. And so she would start doing things like The Locomotion and stuff, and the crowd would go crazy because they had no idea that this young girl on stage was half of Goffin and King. And then the next thing you know, Lou Adler signs her to Ode Records, and she cuts Tapestry. So all of a sudden you have a side person in the band who has the biggest record in the world. So needless to say, it was time for Carole to move on at that point. And I had been in the studio doing an album with Tom Jans and Mimi Farina. Mimi was Joan Baez's younger sister. And when I went in there to do that at A&M Studios, Craig Durgee was the keyboard player on that. And I had never met Craig before, but I called Peter at that point and I said, I think I've found a person that would be perfect for replacing Carole. And he came down and played, and he immediately got the gig with James. And out of that, then the section formed out of that. So it was all these little kind of, just tentacles that were going out all the time that really became this amazing organism.
Mm-hmm. And James and Carole had their relationship. When did that start?
Well, they never had a personal relationship ever. They were never anything more than a musical entity. In that Carole's she was married to Charlie Larkey, and they eventually split up, and she had a whole bunch of different men in her life. At one point, she was living with Phil Robinson, who wrote and directed Field of Dreams, the movie, and then James was always, it was Carole, Carly, and then it was Catherine Walker.
He and Carole were good friends.
Yeah, they were really good. They were good friends and musical compatriots. But there was no relationship beyond that with them. And then in 2010, we all got back together for the Troubadour reunion tour, and put the original band back together for that, with Carole playing piano and stuff. So, the connection's still there with everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you said, and I know that you never drank or used drugs. I'm sure you were around many musical artists that did. So, I mean,
more than didn't.
Yeah, it's got to be a wow. So you were never really tempted? This was just something that you just decided you never would do?
Yeah, I mean, I was maybe on a certain level, I was fortunate that it was still, when I was in my teens, I was around people that were doing things that I sat there and looked at them. I go, do you think this is good? It's like, you're just, I was in a band and our lead singer died of a meth overdose when we were still in our teens. And I was around people that were having bad acid trips and stuff. And I'm too much of a control freak to let go. And so it just never appealed to me. And the only time it ever really sucked was like when you're on a really long, you're out on the tour bus and you're out there, and one of the guys is drunk, and you start off this long drive with somebody going, "Have I told you I love you, man? I really love you." And I'm going to fucking kill you before this drive is over. And wrap them up in gaffer tape and put them in their bunk and seal it up, kind of thing. And just, I'm not judgmental about people that do things. I just never appealed to me for myself.
Mm-hmm. Paul McCartney once said that nobody wanted to play bass. They wanted, I think he's probably maybe talking about himself too. They wanted to be up front. Was there ever a time that you were sort of, maybe dissatisfied playing the bass?
No,
and wanted more?
No, I love the responsibility of the bass. I love where it sits in the music. And I love that on occasion when I have to step forward, I can, but I can step right back. I don't have to stay out front. And that's not my personality. I'm not like up there vying for attention. I'm just really quite content to be just an enigma on the back line. But if I get called forward at some point during the course of a show to do something, I'm happy to do it. I just don't want to live up there.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be something you've played on, but what song first comes to mind when the bass line sort of holds the entire song together?
God, there's so many that I was just driving the other day listening to Papa Was a Rolling Stone, and the bass line on that is the simplest bass line, but it's the glue that holds that whole song together. When I did things like Smiling Face with James Taylor, or Doctor My Eyes with Jackson Brown, or Stratus with Billy Cobham, the bass lines on those songs really tend to be the glue that holds it together. Or James did a cover of a Bobby Womack tune called Woman's Gotta Have It, and the bass line kind of defines it. So there's many, many songs where the bass line really becomes the thing. It's like Another Day in Paradise with Phil Collins was like that. But yeah, there's lots of them, and a lot of the ones I've been involved in, I'm really proud that they did that. But there's so many songs that other guys, from the James Jamerson to Bob Babbitt to Carole King, that all played bass lines. Where as soon as you hear that bass line, boom, that song. And without that bass line, it's kind of like watching a movie and turning off the sound and just looking at that scene. And you're going, there really is nothing going on up there. But then you turn the music or the sound on and you hear the music and you suddenly go, there's tension, there's energy in that set. And it's really, the bass can do so much of that. Where if you removed it, the song would maybe fall flat. But a lot of people, they don't understand bass. So they always go, oh, you're the guy that goes kind of boom, 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 boom. And I go, yeah, that's me. It's like...
I was thinking of Tina Weymouth and Psycho Killer. That is just a great song to me. And to me, her bass line, I'm not sure whether it would have the same oomph, without
Tina's great. I loved all the stuff she did.
Yeah.
There's a lot, and you think of so many of the Beatles songs, Paperback Writer, and all these songs. I mean, McCartney was brilliant. You think of what Cream would have been like if it hadn't been for Jack Bruce's bass playing in that, and there's so much of that. But the essence of it all, to me, is when the group is together and everybody's locked in. That's just when the magic happens. I rarely think of myself, like when I'm working on a session, I don't think of the bass parts. I think of how are we all fitting together and adjusting your parts internally amongst each other to really define the exact pocket and groove and direction in terms of the melodic content. One of the beauties of playing bass is that beyond the kind of defining the melodic structure, then you're also involved in the rhythmic structure. So you're kind of this liaison between the drums and the keyboards and guitar and all that. And you can kind of control the direction that all these things go in, and I love that responsibility. It's something I really kind of really enjoy exploring. And, I was putting up on my YouTube channel today, I was revisiting an album I did with Reba McEntire. And I was just sitting and listening to this thing. And it just made me kind of think for a moment that when I look at YouTube channels, and especially all the things that are posted about bass on YouTube, it's all about chops, but nobody's posting anything about how to create a bass line for a song. It's showing off how fast they can play, how they can, all the different things they can do. And I'm going, I've never been asked to do any of that shit. So if you really actually want to go to work, figure out how to address a song and come up. And some of the stuff with Reba, it's incredibly simple, but sometimes the simplest songs are the hardest to play. It's not coming in with lots of chops. Actually, you can have lots of chops, but if you know how to address the song and going, okay, I could do all this stuff, but this just needs whole notes, and you make it the best whole note it can possibly be, that's where the work is. That's where the job is. I see so many of these guys that are just amazing musicians, but I don't know if they're ever going to get hired for anything, because what they're doing isn't what you get called to do, unless they're doing a solo album of their own. And it's interesting. it's an interesting world of music that we live in, and the things that people look at as important and the things that they don't understand as important. I don't think the schools necessarily teach that to them.
Yeah.
They've been asking me to come back and do another master class at Berkeley, and those are hard to do, because you got all these hungry musicians there that just really are ready to go out and take over the world. But what they don't really realize is there's nothing for them to do when they graduate, for the most part. I mean, they're ready to hit a stadium stage, and if they're fortunate, they might end up being a janitor in a studio and working their way up. It's a real tough call for players now. And so you try to do these master classes and things like that, tempered with some reality checks in it, so that there isn't this false sense of what awaits you when you get your diploma on Friday. What's Monday got for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Understand that. Have you spoken to Phil Collins lately?
No.
Else is like
Phil kind of he moved back to Switzerland and just kind of shut down over there. I guess it's been about 6 months now, where I had an accident, and I fell and smashed my face in. I was all torn up and stuff. And my wife sent Phil a picture of me, and he actually wrote back and said, "What the hell are you doing?" Kind of things. And I was shocked that he wrote. I mean, because he's one of those guys, and all of us, that are in his world. He's one of those guys you could write him 50 times and he just doesn't respond. And then all of a sudden you'll get this odd email from him. So I never push it. I know he's out there, and I know he's not going to write back, but I wrote to him from Lyle's tour to tell him that he gets mentioned almost certainly during the first 18 shows of the tour. They were all in Texas. And I said, "You're getting mentioned every night because of the Alamo connection." And Phil Lyle would tell the audience, Lyle's incredibly generous with everybody in the band. He likes to talk to everybody in the band on stage and have the audience know who these guys all are and what their history is and all that. And so he would ask me, who have you really played the most with in terms of touring? So I'd say, well, certainly James Taylor, and then Phil Collins. And then he would say, a lot of you probably don't know that Phil Collins is like one of the world authorities on the Alamo. And then I would go into the whole thing about his relationship with the Alamo, and that he just donated this massive collection of Alamo memorabilia that he had collected over the years to the Alamo. And they're building an entire museum dedicated to his collection. And so I would write to him, and he never wrote back on this stuff. But I just said, "No, you're out here with us every night." So he's kind of an enigma, but he's had so many issues with his health and stuff that, as far as I'm concerned at this point, I just want him to be happy. I don't anticipate that we'll ever be touring again or doing anything. I'll never say never, but my gut's telling me that it's not going to happen, because I just think at this point it's too hard for him to be out there unless he does some serious healing. So we'll see what happens, but I wish him all the best. And I absolutely am so proud of all the years we spent together and all the music we got to make. It was pretty monumental.
Yeah. What are some of your memories of David Crosby?
I first met Crosby in 1968, standing on the side of the stage at a place called Devonshire Downs, which was a fairground north of our college, watching Jimi Hendrix play. and I just kind of turned and I looked, and I recognized Crosby from the Byrds at that point and said hello to him. And then in 1970, when I started with James, that's when we ended up connecting. And doing like the early Crosby Nash projects, and then David and Graham would come in and sing on James's records, and then we would do these gigs, and then eventually I did some stuff with CSN, and then I think one thing was CSNY. But David was I always got on great with him. For a lot of people, he was a challenge. He was incredibly stubborn and opinionated, and it could be an unbelievable pain in the ass at times, but that was part of what made him great. So I on the one hand, it breaks my heart that he's gone. And on the other hand, it blows my mind that he lasted as long as he did, since he seemed to do so many things in his life that could have taken him out years earlier, in lifestyle choices and things that he had done. But I always got on great with him. I considered him a dear friend, and every chance I ever had to make music with him was always a wonderful experience, and just to hang with him. But you knew from the get-go you were hanging out with a lunatic, in the best sense of that word. He was always a challenge.
I was reading an article recently, and where he said that Neil Young was probably the most self-centered, self-obsessed, selfish person he knew.
I think he was talking, but I think he was mistaken. He was probably in front of a mirror when he said that. I mean, it's he said a lot of things to rankle a lot of people over the years, because he didn't really have much of a governor on what he would say. And he might have afterwards gone, should I have said that? But I doubt if he ever did that. I think what came out is what he thought. And you just kind of go, okay, that's David. I mean, the thing that I love about this community is everybody is unique in their own ways, which is what's reflected in their artistry. And they're all eccentric. I think people that come into this business, that really pursue music, there's an eccentricity, even in the people that are the most mild-mannered and meek. When you really start to know them, you find other sides of them, and you're going, holy crap. They just don't wear it like a sandwich board on them. But when you're around, the guys, I mean, we just lost David Lindley, and certainly he was one of the most unbelievable characters I've ever known in this business. I'd known him since '68 when he was in the band Kaleidoscope. And everything about David was eccentric, but in the best sense of that word. But there was nobody else like him. And so it's I just reflect all the time on the cast of characters that I've been blessed enough to be with during all these years. And I just sit back sometimes and just smile and go, what a bunch of crazy people.
Now, what kind of music does Marcelo and Rosanna like?
I think they're happiest when they're making their own. I think that they keep auditioning. I think they're waiting for their big break. I think they're pretty. I think they're pretty easygoing in terms of their selections of go-to music. But I mean, that's one of the hardest parts about being on the road is, missing them. Anytime I see somebody with a dog, I go running up and I go, I'm not really crazy. I just need a dog fix, and get down on the ground and play with their dogs. And so when I come home and they jump on me on the couch, and I'll sit there and I'll just kind of whisper in their ear, I'll start going, ooh, ooh. Next thing you know, they're howling their hearts out on me, and I'm just sitting there smiling, going, I love this. This is great.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get to where I wanted you to maybe strum a couple of things for.
I can't really do that. I'm not set up where we are here. I don't have an
I was going to
instrument with
say maybe we can schedule a part 2.
Well,
so
sure.
have some time, and I don't want to tire you out right now. It's been a while, so I don't want to keep you all afternoon.
No, that's all good.
But yeah, that if that's okay with you, we'll set that up for some time whenever you're available next.
Now, where are you located?
I'm in Birmingham.
Okay. Well, we might be down your way on the summer tour with Lyle.
Well,
haven't
there you
seen-
go.
I haven't seen a schedule yet of gigs. That'll be a while, but we start around the 12th of June and we go till the end of August. So we might be down your way. Maybe we can hook up down there.
Okay, hopefully so. That sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, Steve, we'll take care and thank you again. And
You
maybe
too. All my best. And
we'll get together.
just
Time.
okay. Sounds good.
All right.
Till next time.
Till next time. Thanks so much.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye bye.